Well, the landmark legal battle brought by the DEA, the Democratic Alliance, and the economic fighters will test the constitutionality of the VAT increase, set to take effect on the 1st of May. They're arguing the VAT hike will disproportionately affect the poor, whilst government is defending the increase as essential for fiscal stability. Well, joining me now is Shaheed Patel, Senior Tax Consultant at CMS South Africa. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon to you and your viewers.
Now, in Section 7(4) of the VAT Act, allowing temporary VAT adjustments constitutionally, is that sound?
So, what I can say is that in tax legislation, there's generally a power for the Minister of Finance to actually implement fiscal policy as soon as possible.
Yes.
So what I can say is that similar provisions exist in the income tax legislation, and tax rates are always or routinely administered in this way, where announcements are made in the budget and the legislation only is passed sometime later.
What do you think about the court challenge? I know you're not in court and you're not following this case per se, but what do you think their chances are of getting this right?
So I think what in essence the case is about is the Democratic Alliance obtaining an interim interdict.
Yes, yes.
And effectively, in order to successfully obtain an interdict, there are a couple of requirements that need to be met. The first one is that the applicant, in this case the DA, must have a prima facie right. I think they base their claim to a prima facie right on the basis that the Minister of Finance doesn't have a constitutional power to increase the VAT rate.
Yeah.
The second requirement that must be met is there must be a reasonable apprehension of irreversible harm. And I think that they might point to, for example, the cost of living crisis that you've alluded to.
Yes.
The third requirement is that there must be no alternative remedy. And the last requirement generally that a court considering interim relief would consider is whether the balance of convenience favors the granting of the interdict or whether the balance of convenience favors, in this case, the Minister of Finance, given the severe consequences that could result for public finances. Those are effectively the considerations that a court at this stage would consider.
Now, there have been some suggestions that SARS could increase tax collections and compliancy to help line the coffers instead of a 0.5% VAT increase. Is this plausible? Is it possible?
I think it is plausible. There has been reports of significant amounts of tax that hasn't been collected.
Yeah.
I think SARS are best placed to answer that question as to how much they can realistically collect.
Sure.
I've heard figures bandied about of between 500 billion and 800 billion. But I've also heard that a lot of that is subject to litigation, etc., etc.
Now, if they manage to get it right and they do pause at least this increase, what does that mean for small businesses, any business for that matter, who has been preparing for this increase due to start on the 1st of May? Can they undo what they've done to increase the VAT to 15.5%?
I think it depends on the particular business and how agile their systems are.
Right.
Generally speaking, one would want to ensure that your accounting systems and point of sale systems and generally just your accounting and tax systems can cope with a quick increase or no change. So that's on the operational side, financial accounting side. One would also need to, for example, examine your contracts if you've got long-term contracts to see what the clauses provide in relation to VAT.
Sure.
And the last thing is obviously your tax compliance function needs to be able to be quite agile and be familiar with the provisions that govern VAT rate changes. But I'm assuming that if things stay the same, it should not necessarily have as great an impact unless people have already prepared significant for an increase and they're unable to quickly reverse whatever they've prepared.
Well, thanks very much, Senior Tax Consultant at CMS, Shaheed Patel.